Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Portland Film Festival. We want to give a quick thank you to Comcast, who has supported us the last 4 years in bringing independent voices in films to the Portland area and abroad. And we also want to thank our local sponsors, Portland Mortgage, Corner Camera, and Oregon Film. And today we have a treat for you. We have the writers and directors of the new film, The Falconer, here with us. I'm Candace McDowell, and I'll be leading some Q&A with them so we can hear all about the background of these stories. So welcome. We have Seanne Winslow and we have Adam Sjoberg. Welcome, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
We're excited to have you. So I would love to hear how you found this story. How did the background of that come about?
Oh, Adam has to take this question for sure.
So it's actually, the journey began a little over 10 years ago. I was working on a documentary about breakdancing around the world, and that brought me in January of 2011 to Yemen, which is on the Arabian Peninsula. And I was filming that documentary there, and I met this, at the time, I think he was 14-year-old kid who is Kai in our movie. And at the time, he and his friend who were working at this zoo in Yemen had hatched this harebrained idea to steal animals from the zoo in order to help his sister. So, and that was the beginning of meeting Kai and Tariq. But it's taken a 10-year journey. It was only a couple years down the road that Seanne got on board. And I told her, I was like, you've got to hear this story about this friendship, and we've got to make a movie out of it. And she can fill in the rest of how she came on board.
Well, I remember Adam had just moved back from New York. I had produced the Lego movie, but was kind of returning to writing and directing. I'd studied filmmaking at USC Film School and knew that I was leaving the studio system to march off into the wilderness of indie filmmaking to write and direct. And I remember sitting on Adam's LA fire escape and him being like, you have to hear this story. I think it's a movie. And he told me the story about Kai and Tariq. And it just, there's some of those stories that are so much larger than life, but then also pull at your heartstrings. And I'd grown up internationally. I grew up in Germany and England and spent time in the Middle East. And I've always wrestled with my privilege of being someone who can come and go. And so this story of these two boys, where one of them's kind of a privileged outsider, felt really personal too. And Adam's had a really international career. He shot in over 60 countries. So it was a story that was both profound in like its simplicity, but also really specific to us in a way, and became a story that we needed to tell.
Wow. And I think I read on your website that this was one of the first films that was completed in that region. Is that right? Like ever?
First feature film fully shot in Oman. I believe there's been some other films that have been shot there, but we think our film is the first feature international film that's been shot there. So one of the things that we committed to, the story originally took place in Yemen, but because of the war there, we were not able to film the movie in Yemen, and we didn't want to make a movie about a place and not be able to make it authentically from that place. And because it's a very small indie film, we just realized at a certain point that we weren't going to be able to make a film that took place in Yemen. Oman is right next door. In many ways, it's a very different country, but it's also, they share a lot of similar cultural history. And so we decided to set the film in Oman and hold on. One of our partners in the region, the way she put it was to have Yemen in our hearts, but make the movie authentically in Oman. And we made the movie not just in Oman, but we set it in a very specific village called Yiti Village, which is outside of Muscat, the capital. And we really tried as hard as we could to make the film very grounded in that village, not just in Oman, but in that village. A lot of the elements to the wedding or different scenes are grounded not just in Oman as a whole, but specifically in the culture of that village. So,
and I think when Adam says make it, we work to make it from that place. What that meant is it really wasn't us, it was us really partnering with people from that village. So in the wedding scene, for instance, the women in that scene are the actual like aunties from that village that are professional wedding organizers, right? And we brought them in, and when we started shooting that scene, we said with our Arabic translator, like, please give us notes on things that aren't accurate. And so there was this co-collaboration with people from the village. There's Yusuf, this kind of goat herder from the village, who was a huge part of all of the goats stuff in the movie. He was like just with us every day on set. And so it was really kind of going as learners instead of as people that have an idea about how a place should look or feel, and saying like, let's make it authentically from this place.
Sometimes it drove our crew mad because we would change things at the last minute. But I think that hopefully we've done justice to this place. And the film is in many ways visually meant to be a love song to this part of the world that I think not enough people know about.
I love that. I loved the water scenes, how you had the village scenes and then you had them out in the water. It just brightened the region. It showed us pieces of the region. So I personally loved the experience, feeling like I was peeking into a country that I may never be able to travel to, right? Most people won't, but even just how you could tell how you were immersed in that culture and letting them be who they are and show you who they are. That was incredible. And are there any personal experiences that you want to share of interactions with people, interactions on set that were particularly special to you?
Well, the one that jumped out at me because Seanne mentioned it is Yusuf, who he actually has a small role in the film. He plays a little bit role in there's a montage where they're selling all these different animals in different contexts. So he's in the film, but he is a family man. He had a bunch of kids, and he was from the village and was just I don't even remember what his official title is in the credits anymore because he did so many different things. He was really instrumental in helping us cast scenes, helping us get locations secured, helping us literally wrangle goats. And sorry, I have something in my ear. And in the end, the very last day before Seanne and I had to leave, we got gifts for everyone and drove back out to the village and got to say thank you to him, because honestly, we wouldn't have been able to make the movie without him. And he's just like one piece of the overall puzzle of how this honestly very small movie got to be able to happen at all, was because of people like him.
I think for me, the personal story that like really sticks out is our actress Noor, who plays Alia. She, Oman is a relatively conservative culture, and she is this like incredibly badass, like, I don't think rebel is even the right word to describe her, because that isn't what she's doing. She's not rebelling. She's just fiercely who she is in this culture. And she's a well-known actress in the country, and has done TV. But I felt like in her, we really had a counterpart. Like, one of the things that we were looking for in casting were actors who we could be in dialogue with and who would take direction, but also like speak up, because like we needed her to be able to speak out for Alia. The real life Alia wasn't able to be on set. We had the real life Kai and the real life Tariq on set with us the entire time. Alia, for a myriad of reasons, isn't able to leave Yemen. And so in some ways, Noor became Alia's voice. And like she and I, particularly that scene where she's talking about the abuse and really telling her dad, like, I can't ever go back. That's a scene she co-wrote with us. We had our words in English and like had, met with her a bunch of times and written that scene like, hundreds of times before, but the actual words that come out of her mouth are words that we wrote together that she could own. And she's been through a lot in her life. So they were really from her heart. And I think I don't think we could have embodied that strong, a courageous woman in that way if we had a different actress. So she's someone who really stands out to me.
Yeah, one of the things that was important for us filming and writing a story about a place where women have various different roles in their family and in the culture as a whole. Some women there wear full head coverings, some women wear none. we wanted to represent the full range of experiences in Oman. So we have women in our script who are more conservatively dressed, who are wearing a head, a head covering, but are maybe wearing more international clothing. And there's a girl in a woman in the skateboarding scene who's like no head covering. We wanted, especially as outsiders who are not Muslim, to not come in and paint some sort of stereotypical strokes, but be able to include a chorus of voices from the Muslim community.
Wow. And you felt that, like I said before, when I was watching it, it really did feel like you weren't interrupting society. You were just taking a picture of it, giving us a glimpse of it. I felt that when I was watching it. It was not Hollywoodish, which was really refreshing, in a positive way. It wasn't a set.
Yeah.
You really felt that it wasn't a.
That's a compliment to us.
Yeah, we're like, thank you. Well, I think
Hollywood's successful, right? Hollywood's successful.
But I think movies like The Falconer can be successful too. Like I'm hoping it's really successful. As someone who grew up in the studio system and has worked on huge studio films, I think that there are big Hollywood movies that have authentic characters, and they have directors and writers that have the authenticity to keep digging and the tenacity. But I also hold Hollywood accountable for some of the divisions that we have in our world today, because it's sometimes easier to paint in really broad brushstrokes and to use stereotypes for emotional shortcuts. And I think one of my commitments and Adam's commitments, and one of the reasons that we chose to collaborate on this film, is that we're committed to not doing that in our storytelling, but to really go deep and to also, and what that means is having a really diverse team of people that are speaking out. Dana Baloo, our co-producer who is from Lebanon, she's the person who took us to Oman the first time and was like, this is where I think we need to shoot. And then she found Musna, who was our associate producer and on set every day helping us really navigate that culture. And we built this incredible team of people around it, which sometimes was really hard because the Middle East isn't like a monolith. There's so many different cultures and so many different accents, and nobody agrees on anything. It's very similar to America in a lot of ways. And it's and there's so many different countries. And so on set, we would have these long drawn out, difficult conversations because of the diversity of voices that we had and the way that Adam and I were committed to making space for that. And I hope that stories like The Falconer can be healing. Whereas I think I want to hold Hollywood accountable and my own friends accountable to tell stories that have that level of nuance, because I think that that's how we can begin to heal this fractured world. Wow, I really got up on a soapbox on that one, but I really care about this.
Great. I mean, that's what this is about, right? The independent film scene. Those movies can come out.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys want to talk about as far as how you work together as a team, how you met each other, how that formed?
Do you want to go first? I can
go first. You go first. I also am blank.
So Seanne and I have been working together now since 2013, 14, so 7 years. We also formed a company together with our producer who helped us make this movie, David Jacobson, who we could not have made this movie without. And I think a good writing and creative partnership is, as cheesy as it is and as cliche as it is like a marriage where you have to learn how to fight together. You have to learn how to stand up for each other. When Seanne and I were going into, I think I can say this, Seanne, right when we were in prep week, right before production, we had one late night fight. And it was almost good to have that fight because we kind of got it out of our system. And one of the things that we really committed to was to always be aligned on set. It's choosing to co-direct is a choice. It is in some ways so much better to have someone to go into battle with. Or whatever, maybe battle isn't the right metaphor, but whatever the nonviolent metaphor is. But it's also harder at the same time. And so one of the things we really committed to was to always be aligned in front of our crew. So anytime we disagreed on anything, which rarely actually happened once we were actually filming, we made sure to step aside and then be aligned and then go in front of our crew with a clear, united vision. And then in terms of the actual logistics day to day on set, I don't know, Seanne, maybe you can talk about how we kind of handed off scenes and.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing I would add is that we both so deeply respect each other. We were friends first. You know, The Falconer is a movie that we wrote and directed together. We're both working on individual projects right now. Like, we're not a forever directing team, although we're both fully open to co-directing something again if the right story came up. But this is a story that we both fell in love with equally and felt like it was really important to have this dialogue between each other in telling the story for the creative product. And so we committed to that. And I think the thing that defines our friendship is, for the most part, but also that defines our directing together, is our curiosity about each other and about the world, and the delight in like hearing, listening, trying to understand, disagreeing, growing, coming to a better conclusion. And sometimes it makes things slower, and sometimes it drives us both nuts because sometimes it feels like we're going around in circles. But oftentimes the actual ideas that we would come to would just crackle in a different way. Or like, I think our inner children were able to collaborate with each other on this movie and like play, like, and it felt sometimes like we wanted to do these crazy things, like being out on the water. That was written as a road trip, but Adam and I ended up finding these boats while we were scouting in Oman, and we were like, we can rewrite the road trip as a boat trip. And like, to have someone next to you as you're directing or writing to be like, yes, that is a great idea, I support you 1,000%. Like, so often, like, you get in your head and you second guess yourself, and to have that partner to like not second guess you, but to yes and you, is like, that's bomb. On set, it was really interesting because this is both of our first feature film, and we both knew that we would be going off to direct our own projects afterwards. It was really important to us that we've get equal directing experience. And so at the beginning of the day, we would go through our scenes and we would divvy them up 50-50, and each of us would be the singular directing voice for a scene. And we'd spent so much time in the script together, so much time talking about it, so much time prepping it, that like whoever was calling the shots was like the person who was directing that scene. And then when we were kind of done, or before we change camera lenses and move on to the next shot, we'd kind of double back, and the other person would be in the monitor the whole time. Like, we had a little handheld monitor that the other person could have, and we'd be able to check back and be like, hey, did I get everything? Do you think there's anything else we should ask them for? And like have that like backstop in a way that isn't necessarily like a logistics backstop, but like a creative backstop that's like listening for the heart of the scene or the heart of a performance. And that just felt really great, because I think we both were able to, in some ways, it's like directing with like really trusted training wheels. Like, you get to like be a full director, but also you have someone who's like, yeah, you got it. Or, hey, do you want to, I feel like, I don't know, I think that Tariq could have pushed a little louder, or like pushed more into that emotion or something there. So I don't know, it was fun, it was magical, it was really, really hard, but like worth every minute of it. So
yeah, we were 6 weeks in Oman, 2 weeks of prep, 4 weeks of shooting. The 2 weeks of prep were 2 of the hardest weeks of my professional life, and the 4 weeks of shooting were 4 of the most fun weeks of my professional life. So
wow, can you tell us what made it extra difficult?
We had without going too much in the weeds on our financing, we had to shoot what was like a many $million-dollar film for less. And so we had to, basically what happened was, going into prep, we had to sort of take our script. What we did is we took many drafts of scripts and turned them into a 20-page treatment that had all of our beats that we needed to accomplish story-wise, and that were, culturally important, or, things that really mattered and we needed to hit. But then it was like, okay, once we get to Oman, we have to find the new story based on what resources we have. And I think that was really hard for our crew, because we couldn't just like hand them a script at the beginning and tell our AD, like, build a schedule based on this. We were building a schedule based on locations we were finding. Seanne and I would spend our days in prep prepping our actors, starting to rehearse the scenes that had been written, going out and doing location scouts to find where we were going to shoot, and then sometimes rewriting scenes based on those new locations. And then the whole time we were casting. So Shauna and I were holding casting sessions at night. At the end, the only two people that were casted, thank goodness we had this, was our two leads, the two boys. Everything, including Alia, everyone else, including Alia, had not been casted until we got up to Oman. So we were holding casting sessions at night, but also casting people on the street during the day when we were location scouting. And then, so it was get up early in the morning and work till midnight every day to build, like I said, build the ship to sail it as we were sailing it. But then once production started, we were really, Shauna and I both also come from a more traditional background, Shauna especially, and we were really committed to having a proper set, proper schedule, 12-hour days,
wrap on time,
1 hour lunches, like not have an indie nightmare drama situation where everyone like hates us. So, I think at the end of the day, we had a tight community on set. There's zero drama outside of a couple of, like little tiny things here and there. It was a really smooth process. So once we got past those 2 weeks of craziness of like, and frankly, Shauna and I driving everyone crazy because we were like, we just found a one-armed man and we want to cast him in our movie.
Which and just to be clear, like that character had always existed. We'd always talked about him like between us as like writers as like the old man in Home Alone who like is misunderstood and misjudged. And so we knew we were casting for him. We were doing auditions for him. And then Adam and I were out scouting and we met Abu Janah, who became the one-armed man. And we're like, had this long conversation with him. He was
already the one-armed man before, but he
right?
Become the one-armed
obviously, man. Right? Obviously. Oh my gosh! Did anyone get injured on your set? Well, no, sorry, this is terrible. We're gonna cut this off. We met Abu Janah, and he actually is a real fisherman, and we used one of his boats, and then we ended up asking if he would be interested in acting in a movie, and then we did an audition with him on the fly there with like lines and whatnot, and really walked away feeling like he was the best person for that role, and he so embodies that role. So it just that's a kind of an example. But it was hard. It was and I'm really proud of the fact that once we were in production, it became, there were still pieces that were unpredictable, but I'm really proud that we were able to run a traditional set that was safe, and that really is because of David. And he really, he produced The Butler, and he just was able to really like fight for the crew and take care of them. So yeah, I don't know, it felt good once we were shooting. Before that, I think too, the other thing, sorry, just to pile one more thing on, I think that the thing that is so hard as a writer director, and I think anyone who's written and directed relates to this, is you're making up something that has never existed before, right? Like you're dreaming up this crazy mirage, and you have to allow yourself to become more and more like fantastical with it. But then until you start shooting, it feels like a dream. And it's only when like you start rolling camera on the words you've written and the scenes and locations and like the actors that you've cast that you stop feeling like a crazy person. And I think that that's one of the things about prep that's so hard, is you kind of go to bed thinking like, oh my God, what if I'm wrong? And then you start to roll camera and film on stuff and you're like, well, maybe I'm not entirely crazy. And then finally, like you call final wrap and you're like, oh my God, we did it. This is amazing. Hopefully we have it all in the can. And then really, I think we had the huge advantage of Adam coming from an editing background as well. So we were able to like really cut stuff while we were shooting too, and know that we were getting what we needed. But it's hard to imagine the unimaginable and then believe into it for an entire team of people that have traveled halfway across the world and are working long hours to make it happen.
Wow. We have a couple minutes left. Is there anything else you guys want to say about films? Any advice for independent filmmakers, especially those who are at a unique location like you have?
I would say find a way. Don't like, how do I put this? A couple of, and I can thank Seanne for this, because she was oftentimes more of the jet fuel that our little production needed to keep us hoping. But if we had let the naysayers stop us, we never would have made this movie, unfortunately. It was we had a few amazing, wonderful investors who believed in this project and gave us a shot to go make this. But it was not what we had intended to raise. And at one point we just looked at each other and we said, we've been working on this movie for 7 years. We've got to go. We have to go make this fall right now. And I'm like, before we took that leap, like literally the days leading up to getting on that plane and during prep, like Seanne was saying, there really were times where I thought, I really hope we aren't like flying a talented commercial DP and a amazing, crew here for it to be a disaster, like, and I'm so thankful that I did not listen to the like insecure voices in my head, and I went and just did it and made it, because you don't get anywhere by stopping yourself when you think that you don't have all the tools that you need or all of the resources you need. Now that the flip side to that, the one little other thing that I would add to that is film sets don't have to be crazy and painful and miserable. Like, get organized, plan, like have roles, have delineated roles, and have a schedule and have a script. We didn't have a proper script per se, but we had written
thousands
the hell out of
and
this
thousands
movie.
and
We
thousands
knew
of
it like the
pages.
back of our hands. And so we went in, even though sometimes our crew didn't always know what the next day's pages were going to be, we had a really clear plan, so that when Seanne and I sat down to edit the movie, we actually knew we'd left nothing on the table. Like we weren't going to have to go back and reshoot anything. Like, we had all the pieces.
Yeah, it's so funny. We joke that I'm the balloon and Adam's sometimes the brick, and that like we make this great team. But I think I'm going to be the brick for 2 seconds on this, because I think that learning the craft is what allows you to make a movie for a budget and on a tight time schedule. And I think that Adam's directed 2 documentaries that were both beautiful. I've produced multiple big features, and we kind of took everything that we knew and threw it overboard, but also brought all of that practice and those 10,000 hours to set every single day as leaders. And I think that is something that I would, if I'm giving any advice, is practice the craft. Is filmmaking and storytelling is a craft. It's like being a concert pianist or a great gymnast, and it's finding ways to again and again go to the mat. Going into this, I'd had the privilege of directing actors in different settings before, but I hadn't really been directing actors in the couple of years leading up to this. And so I started volunteering at all actors for auditions have to do self-tapes, and really famous actors go to places to do self-tapes. And I offered my services at this self-tape facility to direct actors, that like, not to tell them what I thought they should do, but basically to say, what do you want to achieve in this role? Let me help you get there. And so I got to go in and practice directing, practice giving notes to actors in a way that elevated their craft instead of confused them. And to find ways as a director or as a writer to keep practicing, even when you're not on set, even when you're like, I don't know, on your iPhone or whatnot. That's just something I would say is like, it's a craft, and like, do the work. Which is so easy to say once you have a movie that's like in festivals and like doing well, and not actually like something.
But you did the work.
We are here. We did the work.
Right? Well, thank you so much for joining us and for giving us this background peek into your film. I loved it, and hopefully the audience did too. And I just want to remind the audience, this is a competition film. So after you watch this, please go vote and support the film. Yes, yes.
Click. Don't rip the thing. Click the thing.
That's right. We're online. So click the voting button for the Falconer. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your advice to future filmmakers. This is really, really special. And
thanks so much for having us.
Yes, you're welcome. So go vote if you have any more questions. They're going to have virtual lobbies and interactions in there. I'm not sure if you two are attending some of the virtual lobbies. There'll be some interactions with filmmakers and attendees.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Oh, great. All right. Well, thank you so much, and everybody enjoy the Falconer.
Thank
Bye.
you.